Good evening, everyone. It's been a long journey. I have to say, uh, see, when you are destined for greatness and you pass a season in your life where the things you used to do, you hardly do, and perhaps there's been so much delays, or perhaps delays in your life, and you feel like what I was destined to be is actually not coming to pass, and you begin to have doubts, you begin to experience trauma, you begin to experience stress, you begin to experience emotional tension, you begin to experience what we call psychological tension. And that end up being a response to what we call physiological tension. Because the greatest tension, it is not pain in the body. Most pains are caused by emotional tension, psychological tension. And we reach that in life when we don't become aware of where we are, of who we are and what we are destined to be. And I'm talking from a psychological perspective. And for the longest of time, I've been not only inspired, not only driven by what is in me, but having to discover the purpose that God has instilled in my life. And most of the time, we as people, we tend to forget that, you know, life on its own is a seasoned, inspired journey, right? That means that when you walk the journey of life, you experience what we call summer. And when it's too hot, like where I come from in Palabora, up to 45 recently, I just saw houses burning. There's been a lot of questions, but perhaps it's wiring and all that. But houses burning, so they say, due to the sun. And sometimes it gets so hot that even the wind gets too hot instead of it being, chilling or cold. And in life, you get to experience winter when we feel extremely cold and we begin to complain and cry. It's too cold, it's too hot. And we reach a point where we experience spring. In most, correct me if I'm wrong, but in spring, that is when you experience wind, right? A lot of rain, and you reach a point you experience autumn, where things begin to, the things that seemed to have perhaps died and not promising to exist due to the wind you experienced, and they begin to blossom. So sometimes we fail to discover that our lives are a seasoned journey where we have to go through a season in life. And when we don't want to go through a season of growth, a season of pain, a season of joy, a season of laughter, a season of sadness, then we become to experience what we call depression. And I wanted to open up to the world and begin to inspire and rebirth what has been in me for the longest of time. Like I said, it's been long, without having to post, without having to share, without inspiring the world. And sometimes when we do what we do, we think, because we want to get rich, but we are destined to change lives. One of the greatest gifts I've discovered is that When God has called you to do something great, you need to work hard, and sometimes you'll go through seasons. So once you understand that there's a reason why, there must be spring, so that wind and rain can fall and happen, so that the things that seemed to die can blossom, and you get to see the glow, you get to see the life. And when things blossom, even the air, the breath, things begin to make sense. When we see that flower you planted and in spring, and it died, and in autumn you see different thing, in summer you see a different thing, and in winter you see a different thing. At the end of the day, the flower still blossoms. That is our lives, and that is the greatest discovery one can really discover in their lives, and what they are destined to be. And I realize it's been in my heart, to speak up sometimes when God really takes you to discover, or to I want this word, uh not to tap into knowledge, but to be, when when you take when you take water, and you take a sponge, right? And you take that sponge and put it in water. You make it to absorb the water. So, and when it absorbs the water, meaning that water is in the sponge, or rather, there is an element of water in the sponge, and when you squeeze the sponge, there is water. So when God exposes you to knowledge, there is a purpose why. And when you expose a sponge to water, there is an element of change. And when that change happens, the sponge is no longer dry, the sponge is wet. And when the sponge is wet, you can use it to wipe things, you can use it to do other things, and depending on the purpose for that specific task. So basically, that is the purpose in our lives. When God exposes you to knowledge, it is not for you to go to school and study finances and make money for yourself, but to discover solutions that will help people. You know, open a class and start doing tutorials about finances, and that you are doing what we call creating a generational wealth, not only to your family but to people around you, because you'll be educating even those who did not go to school, and you'll be educating even those who are exposed to Facebook, you know just to read posts, just to view, but they'll be learning. Basically, that is the purpose why God exposes us to knowledge, to impact the world. That is why the Bible says knowledge is power. It is not just for fun, just to inspire, but to expose you to be a change, because there are certain people in life who have not reached where you have, and there are certain people in life who have not been where you have been. I was telling my I was telling my wife, and just, what, I'm grateful, and where I'm going, I'm not only gonna make history, but I think I'm gonna change the dynamics of a family. Where we come from. Sometimes God can make you be the first person to have a master's, not just for the fun of it, but so that you can be exposed to something and bring change. And basically, that is why God exposes us to certain things. And one of the greatest gifts that I'm grateful is that when God exposed me to psychology, I had to discover myself, and this is me. And I feel like the world has been dying. The world has been dying slowly, not only men, not only women, but the world on its own. And depression is one of the greatest things that impact, you know, that is greater than pain, because once you are depressed, once you are stressed, you respond through your physique, right? We call it response specificity. That is, psychological which is physiological tension that is caused by your psychological functioning. That could be rather tension in the mind, and stress could be one of them. That is why most of the time when you check, when you're too stressed, when people are too stressed, some they will complain and say, "Ish, I've got a headache." That is a physiological response to to a to a psychological tension. Other people will feel, I've got back pain, and that's what, when I'm too stressed, I happen to experience back pains. Some they've got migraines. You can whatever, you can think of anything. But we have shied away, to understanding the element of depression, and trying to fight that. And we can talk a lot about it, but I feel I should start an introductory uh, workshop, rather tutorial, where we unpack these matters, and we can really name a lot. You find someone who's well there, who's extremely successful, and yet they commit suicide. You ask yourself, what actually went wrong? You find a doctor, I'm just giving an example, who is well educated, highly inspired, highly motivated, highly knowledgeable, and the next thing you hear that they've committed suicide, and you ask yourself, what went wrong? And we tend to neglect that it is not just our well-being, but how we respond to stress, how we respond to trauma, and the negligent around that. And because we have to work, we have to do this, we have to meet end goals, we have to do that, I have to support a family, I have to do that, and we tend to miss that. You know what, I have to acknowledge that I am stressed. And hence many people, they go through an element of depression. But where did it begin? Where did we go wrong? And I feel in my spirit, I feel in my heart, that it is not just to entice a person right now, or to just excite you, but I want us to touch these elements, and we're gonna do this for quite some time, for months, and we just came back. And I believe that if we can understand where it went wrong, why are we experiencing depression? Why are we depressed as a nation? Why are we allowing this to happen? And people can judge you when you're depressed, and other people get depressed after a horrible break, which could be marriage. Others could experience depression after a messy divorce, whether you losing a job, not getting that promotion. Perhaps you were promised to get married by someone, and they said, "Hey, babuya na malobola yawo," and that could depress you. And we try to make it fun. You say, what? But why would we be stressed? But we forget that men and women are emotional beings. What I mean by that, we respond through emotions as well. And sometimes men are neglected because they said men should be strong, but yet men, they are emotions, they're emotional beings as well. But the key here is depression. Any person can be depressed. Men, women, children can be depressed. I've seen a number of people, especially young people, who attempt to commit suicide. And you ask yourself, where did we go wrong? You happen to be a child, and your parents are very successful. Your parents have got all the money in the world, or perhaps they are living well. You're living in a developed family, so in a developed country, heaven, whether it's a sub-heaven, and yet you commit suicide. And what could have gone wrong? Other people, there are many children who have died, and parents, they are still questioning themselves, what went wrong? Depression. I wouldn't want to say this, we need to deal with the power of depression, but we need to deal with the root cause of depression. There are many elements. You go to Wikipedia and you want to learn about depression, you understand that stress is one cause of it, and prolonged stress creates what we call a post trauma personality disorder. which when you experience stress for over a month, then it becomes a post trauma, personality disorder, and prolonged stress for months, then you develop what you call depression. So we need to understand that, okay, perhaps maybe someone could have looked down on you and you feel like, ah, you amount to nothing. Other people, they lose their jobs, and then their families, they turn against them, and we tend to neglect those small subjects, small talks. When someone loses their job, and because you believed in them, or you relied on them, instead of you having to support them. Hi, you know what? When you amount to nothing, but when they had money, they amounted to something. Those are small elements that we need to deal with as people, as a nation, as Africa, as a continent, as a universe. And we are neglecting the simple instincts of survival, living a life that is inspired by health. And it starts from here, supporting someone who's going through depression, but you don't understand what does that mean, because you've studied accounting and perhaps it's difficult to understand human elements. You've seen people who are highly educated, uh, rich in knowledge, and they are executives, but yet they are finding it difficult to deal with human elements, small things, how to treat people, because they have never studied the element of the mind and behavior. And yet they are people like us who are exposed to psychological knowledge, and we want to bring this to the core, that people die through depression, and we take that for granted. And I'm a child of God. I believe and I know that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and that is the truth. And sometimes we neglect the small things. When God exposes you to knowledge, He wants you to inspire people. And we start through the church, we start in the community, we start anywhere. And this is where we need to start, to say, you know what, when God is blessed with a gift, you must be sure to bless other people. So depression is real, and I want us to take it further. I'm gonna be coming. I'm gonna be doing a lot of broadcasts about this. But depression, high element. If there is a disease that really killed, trust you me, depression is the greatest disease that one can ever think of. But we need to be equipped, we need to learn, so that we can be able to support people. And sometimes you find someone who says, you know what, I'm depressed. Okay. And maybe your friend like, chief, man, you're depressed, please go and drink water. You know what, you must speak to someone. And we fail to listen, to say, you know what, when someone says I'm depressed, where did it begin? And the whole truth is that we are a generation that is not stagnant. What I mean by that is that in the next 50 years, there will be a different generation. What is it that you want to live? What is it that you want to inspire? We're not going to live forever, but the truth is that we can't let generation after generation die because of the same elements, because of the same root, depression. And people are depressed, people commit suicide, and people, they are stressed, they are traumatized, and we take that for granted. And instead of us helping them, we laugh at them. And the truth is that when God exposes you to knowledge, I still repeat, it is for a greater purpose. And when God exposed me to psychology, at first I really didn't really take it very highly, until I realized and I discovered that my personality, my values, my interests are not only linked to the career field or to the career space, but the inspiration behind trying to understand the mind and behavior, where did, how, or rather what inspired me. And I discovered and I realized that, the greatest healing is the mind. TD Jakes used to say that the mind is the battleground, and one of my friends used to say, and is still saying, that the way you think, or a man think is so he is or he is, you know. And in the Bible, it really attests to that, that what we think is what we become. But the true element is that we need to take depression very serious. People are dying every day. It may not be your friend, it may not be your neighbor, it may not be your cousin, it may not be your mother or father, it may not be a person who's related to you. We see people on TV, artists, we see great men of God, great artists, your doctors, you can name them. They die due to depression. And we neglected small elements of human survival, human instincts. And I think it's about time that we stand as a nation and we start to unpack and really talk about it, and really talk about it. I would appreciate your comments on this matter, depression. We need to tackle it. And from a psychological perspective, it is real. And from an African perspective, it is real. And if you don't know from a South African perspective, trust you me, it is real. Where you come from, maybe just name your fucking your count your town. From Palabora perspective, it is real. From Nel Mafia's perspective, from Pretoria perspective, wherever you are, it is real. And if we neglect the small things, we'll end up having a chaotic world, that is dead but living. Depression is real. We need to talk about it. We need to share stories about it. You can touch someone. People I've seen close friends and family who nearly committed suicide, who attempted to commit suicide, and I still meet people who still feel what they want to commit suicide. And you have your suicidal ideation. We see people on TV, you see artists, some they have lost their lives because they've committed suicide. And who is there to answer? And we can only learn what we are exposed to, and even books can really educate us about what we call suicidal ideation, which is the idea one has to commit suicide. But it should start somewhere. And when you feel like you have no purpose, when you feel like you amount to nothing, basically that is when you get to experience those small thoughts which could end up making you feel depressed. Depression is real. We need to stand as a nation. We need to stand as a country. We need to stand as a continent to fight it. And it is very sad that depression, it does not kill old people. It does not kill your old adults or people who have lived. Even the young ones. It does not kill the illiterate. It does not kill people who are genius. Even people who are highly educated, you find them committing suicide. You find them feeling depressed. And people who have read all the books you can think of, people who have read, who have been exposed to all encyclopedia, and yet they attempt, or they have got what we call suicidal ideation. And when, as a nation, we neglect that, we are neglecting human race. We are neglecting human survival. And I feel, really, let us share our knowledge. I believe that when God exposed me to psychology, it was not for fun, but it was to educate people. And we should start here. We can really touch lives in our small corners. Honestly speaking, we can touch lives through our small corners. I really want to talk about something, but I feel like I need to have something, before I talk about it. It is a great announcement. After 5 months, remind me, oh, Konji, what was the announcement? But I feel like it's been really a long journey, where we sit with knowledge and we don't really talk about it. So let us educate our nation. Let us talk about it. Men and women, they die because of depression. Men and women and children, they've got suicidal ideation, and we neglect that as parents, and we neglect that as a community, as teachers, as friends, as families, and we feel like, you know what, not to phone attention. But the truth is that until your child has had those thoughts, until someone who's close to you has experienced that, the greatest lesson in life is experience. Then you understand that this is real. When we see stories of people having committed suicide, and you get to we learn about the article, and the answer is, you know what, this person was depressed, this person has had that, this person had that and that, and it's publicity. A paper it needs to sell. But the truth is that depression is real, and the small elements of life, your suicidal ideation is caused by what we neglect as a nation, what we neglect as a people. We're going to continue about this every day. We're going to continue about this. Share your story. Please share this life. May we touch lives. And like I said, it's a podcast that I'll be doing for the longest of time, until we understand, until our government says we need to invest in understanding depression. We need to invest in not only academic, but we need to invest in fighting depression. We need to invest in fighting suicidal ideation, until it is spoken in parliaments, until it becomes a human right, right? Isn't it when we have what we call rights? We have confidence, right? We say, you know what, Ronaldo rights, it's our rights, it's my right to do this, it's my right to do that. But the truth is that until we say it is my right to fight depression, it is my right to fight suicidal ideation, it is my right to fight trauma, it is my right to fight these disorders, because these disorders were not born elsewhere. They were created by small things. And perhaps there are some that were influenced. And sometimes when you have gone through an event that is traumatic to you, you see a similar event, it ignites the trauma, when you have a scar, right? And perhaps maybe the scar, when you feel cold, it becomes exposed, you feel the pain, you feel the inch. This is true even in our minds. This is true even when we go through trauma. When you really go through trauma and you can't really deal with it, or perhaps you have never dealt with it, and something triggers that, and you begin to react differently towards people. You begin to react differently towards your loved one, towards your family, and they feel like, you know what, you think you are better, you think you need more attention. In actual fact, we have never dealt with the scars in the mind, the trauma. And when people respond like that, and then depression kicks in, it develops. This is not a joke. You go read books. I've been exposed to one of the greatest books. You go read books, human development. You go read encyclopedia. You go to your Wikipedia, and you learn about these elements. This is truth. And when you have not really dealt with that, small things can trigger those scars. A lot of people have emotional scars. A lot of people have got psychological scars more than your physical scars. I've got physical scars. I can I can really say a lot about my testimony, but emotional scars are real, right? Psychological scars are real. When you have committed suicide before or attempted to, and you're still alive, and people really will, and when people really look at you and then they make you a laughing stock, that can trigger that emotion. And when it triggers that, you feel like you amount to nothing, you feel like you are meaningless. I once told someone that uh, one of the things that makes people to commit suicide, now I'm telling you the truth, is that when people have reached a point in life where they are emotionally traumatized, in a sense that whatever that made sense has no it does not mean anything at all. That, you know what, my life, I wake up in the morning, I go to work, I feel absolutely nothing. Then people, they feel like the best way to this problem, the best way to this solution is to commit suicide. And that is the whole truth. People commit suicide because they are emotionally blocked. People commit suicide because they are extremely traumatized to a point that nothing is making sense. And I feel like, you know what, if I die, I'll be the solution to my problem, which is me. And we can identify ourselves as problems, but problems should be events that we encounter in life and that we need to find solution towards them. And other events happened years ago. Other events happened even before we were born, and we were born in that problem, and that problem has not been dealt with. And you find yourselves being in the pool of the same problems that your parents have been through, and then because they've never really spoken about, they've never been open about. And this is about time that we stand as a nation. We 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 invest in this element. When you are emotionally healthy, when you are psychologically healthy, you are inspired, you are motivated to do good, whether you work as a soldier, whether you work as a security guard, whether you work as a kitchen as a chef, as a cooker, whether you work as a chartered accountant, whether you work as a financial officer, whether you work as an investigator, whether you work as an executive, it doesn't matter, my brother, whether you work as a minister. When you are emotionally good, when you are emotionally healthy, you are able to produce great results even at your workplace. But when you are emotionally depressed, trust you me, it doesn't matter who you are and where you come from, you feel like life is meaningless. And then that is when we get depressed. We need help. We need to talk about this. And this is the whole truth. Children of God, men and women, the nation as a whole, let's stand up and talk about depression. And this is a topic that I'm going to be talking about it the entire October. This is the topic that I'm going to be talking about it, unpacking the elements. And I promise you, they are nice whereby I'm going to tell you facts. They are nice whereby I'm going to share other theories and stories out there, so that we understand depression. And trust you me, we may feel like, you know what, this is a sensitive issue. Yes, it is sensitive. If it is not sensitive enough, it is not very serious. But if it is sensitive, it is a serious issue, and it is a national problem. It is a national problem, and I wish people can invest in these matters. Where we can go to stadium and fill stadiums. Where we can go to to greater halls, even parliaments, address this issue. To say, you know what, president, make it a principle, make it a human right to fight depression. I see we are doing good in in fighting gender-based violence. That is great, and there's more that we still need to do. And I've seen great people really talk about it, and there are a lot of organizations There are a lot of programs, but depression is real. Depression is real. Depression is real. Depression is real. Imagine someone who's been working for 10 years and they are retrenched. And not because of another thing. The organization is closing. And indeed it closes. What happens to them? And they've been working in cities or in a city, and yet they come back home. I'm about to close, yeah. And they come back home and they meet the people whom they have been supporting, and they look at you, chief, you thought you were smart enough, but I've been taking care of you. Instead of you having to support them, if it means inspire them. But when they are exposed to those remarks, they feel like, what, now I have no value. Number one, they feel like now people have lost interest. Two, they feel like really nothing is making sense. Three elements. And they end up feeling hopeless. They end up feeling helplessness. They end up feeling that life is meaningless. And you see reactions which are physical, which is pains, and those could be symptoms. And because we don't really take that as a serious matter, and it prolongs after weeks, after a month, and you've been really thinking about this. After a month, you've been stressed and you have this migraine, and all you could think is a tree, and all you could think it's a rope. All you could think it's, what, I feel like it will take the whole Panado, all 50 pills. That's all you could think. Because you feel like life is meaningless now. I've been working for 10 years and I'm retrenched, not by choice, but because of circumstances and external circumstances. What I call intermental issue. Intermental, right? But it's from around, right? Because of the social interaction you're going through, and people telling you amount to nothing. And when you begin to internalize it, which is called intramental, you make it your own personal problem, and you feel like people are looking at me as a problem now instead of a solution. Then let me give them the best solution, and then I commit suicide. Tomorrow you wake up, I had an uncle, he was doing that and that, and now he's committed suicide. Really, wow, it's a shame. But this is a problem. It's a problem. It starts from those small things. How you value your friends, how you value your family when they have money. How do you value them when they have nothing now? And they come back home. They've been supporting you for 10 years. They come back home. Perhaps there are some who even studied. Instead of saying uncle, instead of saying brother, instead of saying sister, I'm here for you. How can I support you? Now I'm in a better position. But when we are in better positions, we think of ourselves. My father, Mfundisi Mono, used to say, when God has blessed you in your family, it is for you to be a blessing to them. God can never raise you alone. You as a blesser, will be a blessing. Yes, a blesser. Will be a blessing in your family. You having to work, right? And you look at them like, you thought you were better than me. And we end up saying prayers. Lord, I pray for my enemies that they may live longer to see my successes. Oh, God, yes. It's a great prayer, right? Lord, I pray for my enemies to live longer. Yes, they will live longer for them to see my success. And yet, And yes, they see your successes. And what next? You look down at them. And when they are depressed, when they are traumatized, and when they commit suicide, we look at them and we judge them because we don't know what it feels to feel the way they do. Until we understand these elements, we'll be able to stand as a nation, as a country, as a community, as a society, and fight this disease called depression. Can I get an amen? 20 years ago, as I close, 20 years ago, when this pandemic called HIV entered our territorial space, it was seen as deadly. Bona, o tshwere ke AIDS, and you see people really losing weight. Yeah, only AIDS. And as we grow and we are educated that, there is what we call HIV. And when a person is in the stage of AIDS, it's a stage, right? Then we know that, you know what, they are in a bad stage, the same way as cancer, the same way as depression. Depression is a stage. When one is in that stage, trust you me, brother, all they need is your support. Over the years, people have been surviving. There have been programs. I'm proud of the country, I'm proud of the nation, which really supported people who are living with HIV. And even to this day, even also life insurances, they support, and people to this day, they can still live. You find people who are ambassadors of HIV who have been like living with the disease for 20 years. And it's unfortunate because other people are born with it. They did not contribute any factor. So there are two things that happens in life. It's either you are infected or you are affected. There is no way you can live a life without experiencing the two. If you are infected, then it means you are the victim one. Yes, you are the person who's going through that. So if I'm infected by depression, I'm the one that is going through depression. If my family, if my brother is depressed, I am affected because I am not the one experiencing it. I am not the one who's experiencing it, but he's experiencing it. And I am the one who's a close relation, right? Who's an external family, who's a friend, who's a brother, who's a cousin. So if you are not affected, if you're not infected, you are affected by depression. If you're not affected, you are infected by depression. And we cannot go on like this. Friends and family, I invite you. Let us continue to share this video. I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to unpack elements. I'm going to unpack symptoms so that we can share this knowledge to fight it. If it must reach a national assembly, if it must reach the higher office parliament, so be it. So that we can be supported to have bigger platforms to talk about this. So that we can be supported to talk about this from a deeper level. Depression is real. And I pray right now that anyone who's infected by depression, may they receive support from their friends, may they receive support from their family, may they receive support from their loved ones. And anyone who's affected by depression, may they receive support as well, and may they hold each other's hands. May they talk about this matter. Can you make someone's life meaningful for once? You can save them. You can save them, and you can be saved. Hashtag we are fighting depression. Let us push this hashtag. Hashtag fighting depression. Hashtag fighting suicidal ideation, hashtag fighting depression. I'm going to continue with this, continue doing the hashtags, and let us raise our voices. Let us speak out loud. We need to be healed as a nation. And depression is the greatest disease. Depression has now become a pandemic. COVID came and passed. It's unfortunate we lost our loved ones through this, but depression is the greatest pandemic there is right now. May God bless you as you continue to share. Hashtag fighting depression. Hashtag we're fighting suicidal ideation. Hashtag fighting depression. Hashtag fighting suicide. We are going to make it. Stay tuned. See you tomorrow. And we will fight it together. God bless you. Amen.